And then the third game among Power 5 teams, this is the SEC Championship. The number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs are about a 6-point favorite against the 8th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. This will be Saturday, 4 o'clock Eastern time on CBS. Spot in the playoff on the line potentially. Only 3 teams have lost their conference title game and still made the playoff. That's something Georgia and Kirby Smart have already experienced. Of those 3 teams, they are 2020 Notre Dame, 2021 Georgia, and 2022 TCU. I don't think there's any wiggle room for Georgia here. They have to win. This is the 4th time that Alabama and Georgia have played in the SEC Championship game. Alabama is 3-0 in the previous meetings. 2021, when Bryce Young had a heroic 420-yard day. 2018, when Jalen Hurts came off the bench to lead the Crimson Tide to 14 fourth-quarter points, including the go-ahead rushing touchdown with 60 seconds left. And then in 2012, that was when it was a crazy game, absolutely crazy game, but Georgia caught the ball at the 5-yard line when the time expired. Nick Saban's 10-1 in conference title games in his career, including his time at LSU. His only loss was in 2008 against the Florida Gators. He's also 7-0 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, including 3 wins against the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart has built an incredible program. And to see the consistency that this group has played with throughout his time is remarkable. Now, they're different this year. They're a little different this year, and I'll explain why here in just a moment. Alabama's offense, start there. Jalen Milroe has taken his game to the next level in the last month. Since November 1st, he's been a different guy. He posted a 93 QBR, accounted for 15 touchdowns, had only 4 sacks in the 4 games he played in November. In the first 7 games, 77 QBR, and responsible for 18 touchdowns while being sacked 30 times. So sack numbers in the last 4 games, down 26 from the first 7. Touchdowns, down only 3. So he is playing at a crazy high level. And a couple things that I've noticed from him. He holds the ball pretty long time. Longest in the Power 5 on average. 3.24 seconds before he throws it. Okay, that's the second longest in the FBS. Jace Bauer at Central Michigan holds it the longest. But he holds it the longest and the ball's in the air for a long time too, because they want to take shots downfield. Now, 15% of his passes are considered off target. That's 106 in the FBS, but he is absolutely at his best when driving the ball down the field. He's 7th in QBR on deep routes. So he has done a great job and has started to really factor in the run game as well. Ran for 107 last week. That was his 2nd 100-yard game of the season, his 5th 100-yard game by an Alabama player this year. And only 1 player has rushed for 100 yards against Georgia in the past 3 seasons. That was Cody Schrader earlier this year. He, of course, is the outstanding potential Doak Walker Award winner from Missouri. And the last quarterback with 100 rushing yards against Georgia was Tennessee's Josh Dobbs way back in 2015. Now, a couple things to take into account here with Georgia's defense. They're still very good in many, many areas. They're excellent in the secondary. I think they have elite players in the secondary. Tyke Smith at nickel star, elite. Kamari Lassiter, elite on the edge, on the perimeter. Amazing cover corner. Probably the one of the best that Georgia's had, which is saying something because there's been a lot of good ones in the last handful of years. And then Javon Bullard at safety. 3 super elite players. I think Malachi Starks is really, really good. And I think at the other corner, Dalen Everett, he's the guy that at times has been picked on here when trying to attack this Georgia defense through the air. They are really, really good in the back end. But against the run, they have not been as good as they've been in the past, and I'll explain why here in just a minute. Georgia's offense, Carson Beck, he's coming off his worst statistical performance of the year against Georgia Tech, threw for just 175. It's the only time this year he's been held under 250. But his 11 games with 250-plus yards are the most in the FBS. He gets the ball out really quick, 2.35 seconds, shortest in the FBS before he delivers the football. And the ball is in the air for less than a second. That's the 12th fastest in the FBS. Pretty amazing. The guy drives the ball and he gets rid of it very quickly. He's got a big arm and he's not afraid to show it off. Now, really, really accurate as well. Just 6% of his passes are considered off target. That's the 2nd best in the FBS. The guy is awesome. He is a great football player. He's been a joy to watch this year, and to fill the shoes of Stetson Bennett as well as he has, I can't say it's a huge surprise. He has been everything I expected him to be and some. Very impressed by his performance. Now, the weapons, that's a question mark coming into this game. Brock Bowers has been in and out of the lineup at times this year with the ankle injury. Missed last week's game, but I would imagine he'll be back for this one. Ladd McConkey, he's been out with a back injury and has been out with an ankle injury, but hopefully he's at 100% for this one. Ra Thomas, another one of those receivers that was coming on late in the year. He sprained his foot a couple weeks ago. It's up in the air as to whether or not he'll be able to play. And then Tate Ratledge, their right guard. He warmed up in the game last week but couldn't go. If he's back, that'll be a huge coup for the offensive line. That certainly, he's probably been maybe their most consistent offensive lineman this year, knowing that Mims, their right tackle, has been out for an extended period of time. The most consistent lineman has probably been Tate Ratledge. So it's going to be important for Georgia to make sure that they try to get all those guys back. And if they can't get all those guys back, then Carson Beck and others will have to step up, and they have all year long. Rosemy-Jacksaint's been excellent at times at wide receiver. Dylan Bell is probably as versatile a player as you'll find in the sport. He's amazing as well. Alabama's defense has two bookends that are awesome. Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, both had a sack in the Iron Bowl, tied for third in the SEC with 8 sacks this year. This game's going to come down to a few things. I'm going to give you some numbers, so stay with me, okay? This is the SEC championship game, so we know what is going to decide it. It's going to be run game, big plays, third downs, and turnovers. Those 4 things are going to decide the game. Simple as that. Let's start with the run game, okay? Alabama's rushing offense averages about 178 a game. That's 45th. And about 4.5 per carry. That's 53rd. But outside the tackles, they're actually really good. 6.5 per carry. That's 12th. And they have a lot of explosive runs too. They have 81 runs that have gone for 10 plus yards. That's 8th. Georgia's rushing defense, okay? Really good. Really good on defense against the run, with the exception of a few games here and there. Last week was one. Auburn was one. Missouri was one. Will they play their best in the biggest game of the year? They're 28th in rush defense, and they allow under 4 yards per carry. Still pretty good, but that's 57th in college football this year at 3.98 yards per carry. But here's the problem for Georgia. Outside the tackles, they're giving up 5.6 yards per carry. That is 92nd in college football. I just told you Alabama averages 6.5 per carry. That's 12th. Georgia allows 5.6. That's 92nd. On zone reads, not a huge part of what Alabama does, but for this game, based on how Georgia struggled with it, I would think Alabama will carry a heavy dose of these. On zone reads, Georgia is allowing 6 yards per carry. That's 112th in college football. So you heard that right. On zone reads, 6 yards per carry, 112th. Outside the tackles, 5.6 per carry, 92nd. Georgia on the edges of their defense have not been as good against the run as they've been in the past. I don't know why, because I think the personnel is still really good, but that is an area of concern if I'm Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, the defensive coordinator. As far as Georgia's run game, Georgia's 31st in the country, running the football about 186 yards per game. They've been much better, though, the last 3 weeks. Part of that has to do with the offensive line getting better because Amarius Mims, their first rounder at right tackle, is back healthy. And Kendall Milton, their big body back, he's been back in the lineup as well. So they've been much better the last 3 weeks. But that has not been something they've relied heavily on this year. Alabama's rush defense is 36th in college football. They got gashed last week against Auburn, so I would imagine Georgia will implement some of those runs that Auburn had success with because there were some holes on that side of the ball, particularly on counter action. They're right outside the tackles. All right, so Alabama's rush defense is still good, not as elite as they once were. So whoever wins the rushing game and the rush defense, I think has a really good chance to win this game. I'd give a slight edge to Alabama at the moment. Big plays. That's considered 10-yard runs, 20-yard passes. Alabama's offense has created 132 of those this year. That's 5th. Georgia's defense has given up 75. That's tied for 20th. Pretty good. So both sides, Alabama creating, Georgia defending, both are in the top 20. What gives? We'll find out. Georgia's offense, conversely, they have 128. That's tied for 10th. Alabama, however, has given up 83. That's tied for 33rd. So the one glaring issue there, Bama's given up 8 more big plays than Georgia this year. That drops them from Georgia's T20, Bama's T33. Whoever defends the big play, I think has a real good chance to be successful in the game. I give a slight edge to Georgia in that area. On third downs, Georgia is number 2 in both third down offense and third down defense. 56% conversion offensively, 27% defensively. Really, really good. Alabama, third down defense, not quite as good. 34% given up. That's T27. But their offense has been excellent, especially the last 4 weeks. They're up around 49%, which is 12th in the country. Either way, though, Georgia has the edge when it comes to third downs. Turnovers. Georgia's only forced 13 this year. That's 104th in the FBS. Alabama has only turned it over 10 times. That's 10th in the FBS. That's advantage Alabama. And a trend in this game, Alabama is a 6-point underdog against Georgia, and Alabama as an underdog under Nick Saban is 6-5 outright, 6-4-1 against the spread. And this is the 4th time Alabama's been an underdog since 2010. All 4 of those games have been against the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia is 12-4 against the spread against ranked teams since 21, and Alabama is 2-7-1 against the spread in the last 10 games in November or later. I'm taking the Crimson Tide. I think they're going to be able to run the football. I think they're going to be able to get on the edge, get on the perimeter. I think they'll be smart with how they try to implement some of their run game. And I think their secondary has been better and better and better. If you look at the Texas game, that was the low point. But the secondary from that point forward has played much better down the stretch. So I think the secondary will match up pretty well with the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm taking the Tide. I think it'll be a close game, a really close game, an all-time thriller. But I think Alabama will be able to control the line of scrimmage better than the Georgia Bulldogs.